Check them out at www.mermaid.com or call them at 472-2486.
Mermaid Mattress Factory and Showroom.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Where'd the old town go? They moved it on north of here near the shopping mall.
Good morning and welcome to Old Town Cleveland here on WOOP FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.woopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Deb, tell us what's going on today.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff going on today. Good morning, everyone. We're going to be talking about where to shop and shopping the way it used to be. And we're doing that in honor of Small Business Day. Today's the day to go out and find those small businesses in your community and, well, support them all year, but especially today. 70% of the money they take in stay right here in the community, and that helps us all grow. And we have our good friend, Eddie Cartwright, with us today, and Eddie's going to help us talk about when the village opened up and when you used to shop downtown, and maybe name off some of the merchants. And we hope you will get your stories together and call us at 614-5553.
You know, Eddie, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit or age you a little bit, growing up.
Well, I'm old. If you're going there,
I'll
go ahead and tell you I'm old.
Well, but growing up here in Cleveland, and as a young man, I looked at these people that in the community that were leaders, and people like Eddie Cartwright. You were one of those people that, I said, can I do the things that Eddie Cartwright did? Harlan White was another good guy that that I looked up to. And
we had a lot of young leaders in Cleveland.
Yeah, and being in the JCs, we when I started in the JCs when I was 18 years old and started trying to see who the leaders were, and met people like you and Tom Rowland and Kenneth Tinsley and Stax Mayfield and some of those people like that, and I learned a lot from people like you. So I just want to say thank you for. Well, I don't know if you made me or not, but you may not want.
Thank you for what you've done for Bradley County.
You may not want to take credit for me, but what I'm saying is, young people look up to people in the community who are leaders and things of that nature. And Kenneth, you was a great example for a lot of young men and young women growing up.
Well, I appreciate you saying those kind words, but I guess what happened in my case is being born over on Magnolia Avenue and going to North Cleveland Church of God and staying there first 20 years of my life. It just sort of evolved. I love my community and I wanted to be involved, and I liked politics. My dad was, he was on the city school board and was a Republican committeeman at Mayfield School, and my first recollection of politics was before seat belts. I was so small I could stand up in the front seat of the car and ride with my mom as she hauled voters to Mayfield Precinct, and that was my start in politics. But I do appreciate the kind words, and it's been a good public life for me.
I'm ashamed to mention what my first thing. I was in the first grade at Oak Grove, and I handed out cards for John J. Hooker.
Well, he's still around, isn't he?
He's still around, right?
Well, yes, unfortunately, he is still around. But
for those of you who don't know, he wears like jackets that have tails on them, like formal tales.
I
And
think if you look
he
at a
walks
picture
around.
of him and Tom Rowland could be brothers. I mean, I've got a picture of him that you think it's Tom Rowland.
And we posted it on Facebook, and Ron said, "Who is this?" And almost all the guesses were Tom
Tom
Rowland,
Rowland,
and
so,
it was John J. Hooker. But I believe over the years he's got to be kind of the character in
And
Nashville.
Before we get into
Well, how many times did he run for governor? A time or two? I
Every
know.
well, I
time.
mean, when I was
Every
in the
time.
first grade, which is 1959-60 area, and I remember standing at the front door at Oak Grove handing out John J. Hooker cards, and I said, "Vote for John J. Hooker." I mean, I was into it. I had no idea who John J. Hooker was. They paid me $2 for doing it, and at 6 years old in
Well, I
1960.
think he got in the Minnie Pearl fried chicken business when she did, and I think both of them lost a
Well,
hat full of money.
He also, he fought for some really big legal battles.
Right.
He's an attorney, and I forgot what. There's one major U.S. Supreme Court ruling that changed America, and I can't remember what it is.
One
right now.
vote, one.
Yes, exactly.
The one vote rule.
You're right. And a major battle that he done
Right.
and won that. So he's a sharp man, but
He didn't ever know when to quit, did he?
Before we get started, I wanted to mention that some local small businesses that it's pretty amazing now. And Eddie, we'll talk about this in a few minutes. As you used to shop, everything was local, and then there was just a handful of those national chains, and then the Village opened, and we got a little bit more, but it was still pretty local down here. But people like Victor Hicks down at City Auto Parts down on Central Avenue, still. He's competing with, all these other O'Reillys and all these other big
Ron,
national chains.
up in Charleston, they just closed in the last couple of years. I believe his name was Harrelson Auto Parts Shop, the one that was right up against the river there.
Mm-hmm.
And probably one of the oldest brick buildings in Bradley County. Parts of it is anyway. But he still had parts from the 60s inside that building. And it turned into a treasure chest for whoever sold all that stuff on eBay.
And there's a lot of others, but over here on Edmond Street, there's the diner on First Street there, right off Edmond. The diner at First. It used to be a little old Ford Inn for years, just a little bitty thing, but great. We go over for breakfast this morning, and Kathy waits on us, and that my friend Margie runs.
Farmhouse
the
restaurant.
farmhouse out there. Just small businesses like that are going away. I mean, they're all the Walmarts of the world. We just went through Black Friday, and so today is shop small business, and so do that. I've got a friend who started a little barbecue company called Barbecue Done Right. His name is Anthony Dunn. So,
Where is that?
Well, he's still in
He
the
just
incubator.
He does a catering system.
He's in the incubator up at Cleveland State Community College now. Matter of fact, he's giving away free sliders, or a slider, and some homemade tea. If you want to drive by, you go up to Cleveland State and go in behind the Innovations building, and he'll be giving away barbecue up there
Is
today.
he a Dunn from the Dunn families
Yes.
up at Charleston?
He sure is.
Yeah.
Boy, they've all got a good reputation.
And he is a fine fella, and they posted a picture of him on Facebook the other day, and he had been apparently cooking turkeys for Thanksgiving that he had taken orders for. He was standing out in that pouring rain the other day watching those turkeys cook.
But yeah, and just small
He's a
business.
fine fella.
And mainly his business is just catering, so he caters your party. But he had a turkey dinner type thing set up for people for Christmas. For Thanksgiving, and apparently sold a lot of them, cooking in the rain and everything.
Well, let me mention too, a Stadium Barbecue. Have you been there, Eddie?
I have.
Stadium Barbecue is excellent barbecue there on 17th Street on Stewart Avenue.
Good fried pies.
Oh, my gosh,
unbelievable.
folks! They do
I try to stay away
cherry
from them, though, Eddie.
cheesecake fried pies and just wonderful fried pies.
Banana pudding fried pies. Oh, that was.
But they also cooked lots of food and served it to the community at Thanksgiving for people that couldn't afford a meal, and I appreciate that. And that's what small businesses do for your community. But go by and see the folks at Stadium, and they've just opened up a place up in Sevierville.
Gatlinburg. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
Sevierville.
out on.
The highway.
So I guess what is the big highway called out there? Dolly Parton Parkway, or to that way. But yeah, they're right out through there. So next time you go to Gatlinburg, go up and see them up there. They have a big fancy restaurant up there. Eddie, when you were a boy or younger, where'd you get your pants? There wasn't any Walmarts back then. Where'd you get your pants?
My blue jeans come from Draper and Darwin. And I remember when you could go in there and buy the blue jeans, the Levi's with the red label on the back. They were $4.95, and you bought them about 2 sizes too big. And I can remember even in high school, I was a lifeguard at the city swimming pool. I'd buy a new pair of blue jeans about 2 sizes too big, and I was slim and trim in those days, and jump in the pool out there at the North Cleveland pool, and they'd draw up to fit you.
I remember going there even in the 70s when I was in high school, and painter's pants became the big phase.
Yes.
Those white painter's pants with
Right.
the all the little pockets and stuff on them. And I just watched in amazement as the lady there behind the counter, when I paid for them, she pulls off that thick paper and she lays it down and she wrapped them up and tied twine around them and handed them to me. And I just looked at her like, okay, because I had never seen anybody do that before. But I understand that was something that's how they used
Now,
to
did your
get things
mama
ready.
sew any?
No, she was not a seamstress.
Because a lot of people did, but I said, there was fabric everywhere. You could go into a store and they had fabric, and I don't know who sold the fabric. Did Draper and Darwood sell fabric?
Yes,
I think
they did.
I think they did.
See, I sewed quite a bit, and the people in my family did. And unless the store said ready-made, is that ready-to-wear clothes on it? I think it's something like that. You knew that in the back corner somewhere there's going to be cloth. Of course, you had Chandler's, which was the cloth store of all cloth stores.
Right, they came along later.
5 Points bargain store.
When I was a little boy, and we considered it a local store, Miller's was on Ocoee Street, and J.D. Harshbarger was the manager of it, and they were a all-purpose store. They sold cloth, they sold ready-made clothes, they sold shoes, they sold ties. At Christmas. We put half the ties on one rack and half the ties on the other, and the reason we separated them, he got $1 for one rack and $1.50 for the other side, but it was I'll tell you a quick story about that. My daddy decided, he was a local policeman, and he decided that his son ought to have a job, especially through the Christmas holidays when he wasn't going to Bradley High School. So I go out and looking for a job, and I didn't know Mr. Harshbarger. I knew his daughter, Jeannie, who was a year ahead of me at Bradley. But so I went in and I said, Mr. Harshbarger, I'd like to fill out an application for part-time help during Christmas. And I didn't know that he knew who I was, and he said, I tell you what, Eddie Jean, that's what people called me when I was a little guy. He said, you go back home and tell your daddy that I'm going to hire you if he'll just come down here and loaf in my store during Christmas. Well, hey, that put a police officer in his store. It kept people from being tempted to steal from him, and he got that free. So he hired me, and I worked for Mr. Harshbarger and thoroughly enjoyed and learned a lot from him. He's a good merchant.
Now, was he still they were at the corner of Central Avenue and Ocoee Street at that time?
Well, yes, on the corner was Callaway Grocery, and then Appler's Shoe Store, and then Miller's.
Okay.
So
now,
he was at Miller's then.
yes.
There was no just big. When did the big brand name companies come in? Miller's, and there was the Pennies and the Belks.
Yeah, well, when I was a little guy, we had Woolworths. They were over there where Harlan Painter, where the Bell firm, they had a store right in there, and that was a long time ago.
That's across from where the spot would have been, right?
No. It was up in the between the Bohemia Theater and the Merchants Bank on the corner. There was a Woolworth store.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, now I know where. Yeah, Bells. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, they were right in there.
Now, did they move up then and have a bigger store later on?
Yes. They moved on up the street into where Lee College is building that new building
Right.
now.
Yeah, we're St.
And
Luke's.
then J.C. Penney was over there where Stamper's furniture place is. That's where Penny's was. And Toby Taylor had a grocery store in there about where the most eastern part of Stamper's store is. That one stall like there. That was Toby Taylor's store. And then there was next door was Fike Funeral Home and a hardware. Fike sold hardware.
Boy, I don't remember.
Yeah, they had a little hardware place there. Ben Crocs had sold lawnmowers and stuff like that. And of course, Ben Moore, where the People's Bank, and that People's Bank sign's still on that building on the corner
love
there.
that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Ben Moore had Moore Pharmacy in there. And Lake Clymer and Ray Evans were his, I guess, his all-round folks, did whatever there was to do, worked behind the soda fountain and all that, and they served the best chicken salad sandwiches. Oh, it was, I can remember as a youngster, my mom would take me in there and we'd get a milkshake and a chicken salad sandwich. That was a real treat.
I know Gene Flowers, who when he was a young boy worked in there, and learned how to make their hot slaw, and he still does it. And I know him and Brandon Forster, Dr. Forster, have an argument who makes the best hot slaw. And so far, I have to admit, Gene Flowers makes the best hot slaw because Dr. Forster has never brought me any of his.
Yeah.
So
every time we mention it, hot slaw happens to show up. So this is why this is Ron's way of getting hot slaw.
Gene, your hot slaw is still the best. So, but now there was no big food stores back then either. We got Kyle coming in here. Let's take that. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Mr. Ron Moore, how you doing this morning?
Hey, Bullet.
Bullet, how are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. I just want to bring back some memories to some people. I was born in 1948, and I lived around the old field. Where I used to get my blue jeans was over at Mitchell Michael Chris's modern day store called Chris Grocery. It's right up from Wilson Street, I think, right there on the corner. And I remember those pants was so stiff. When I put them on, I had to walk straight-legged. I was,
Bullet, did your mom ever have the pants stretchers?
yeah. And,
Yeah, my mom always put starch on my dad's pants and stretched those legs, and then she could take the stretchers out and they'd stand up by themselves.
Yeah, these were stiff, but I was about 8 years old. I remember going to that store, and I don't exactly remember where I was born, what house I lived in then, but I know we lived around East Cleveland. I was about old field, and I was about 2 years old. But I'm about to check into that. See, how would I go about doing that, Deb?
I have no idea.
Find somebody that's about your age that would remember where you lived, I guess.
Or a little bit older, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do know I lived in old field, and I was about 2 years old because I had my picture tucked on a pony, and I used to go around doing that. But I'm going to enjoy it today, and I just want to tell Ron, Cleveland got. He already knows Cleveland got beat his upper, I think, last night, wouldn't you, Ron?
Yeah, I was on with WTMB. We did we taped it, and so we can re-show it under TWSWA rules. They can't show it till 7 o'clock tonight. So if you weren't there, you get to see the entire Cleveland game on Channel 5. It's painful, though. I mean, Cleveland ran into a buzzsaw up there in Knox West. Is just a really good football team.
Well, the fact of the matter is they just got beat, and they just ran up against a good team last night. And
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I always thought about it. If you can't win, you don't need to be in the state championship game.
That's right. Well, you know that Cleveland got to the semifinals. There's only 24 teams playing in that division in the state last night, so that's pretty impressive that you're one of the top 24 teams.
And we congratulate them because they started off the season. It was a little rough for them, and they got some steam behind them, and they've done well, but they just couldn't make it past that.
They lost 3 times in the regular season, once to Knox West, once to McCallie. Both run that veer offense, which Cleveland just couldn't stop this year. And then they just missed a kick down at East Hamilton, or they had beat them. They really were a better team than them. So Cleveland's great. You know, I think in the power ratings, Cleveland's ranked the 11th best team in the state.
Well, I'm gonna enjoy you and Deb's show. I think yours have got the best thing going, and yours always got a lot of things to talk about. So I'm gonna listen to you and enjoy you.
Thank you, Bullet.
And Bullet, we appreciate you, everything you do for the Veteran Cemetery. Eddie Bullet here takes care of the Veteran Cemetery, him and his brother, and just do it out of the goodness of their heart. And
that's a wonderful service.
It is. It's really great. We appreciate you, Bullet.
Thanks, Bullet.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
The picture we have up on the screen, Eddie, and I'm going to describe it for those of you who don't have the internet. It's a 1947 picture of downtown Cleveland standing on the corner at the courthouse looking south down Ocoee Street. The cars are going in 2 different directions there. on the left, at the far left, you see the First Methodist Church. I believe is the name of that church.
It is. That's
the
where
Bible.
That's where Miltine and I were married.
1912, that building was built, and
Now we didn't get married.
no,
in
I know you
1912.
didn't. It had some dust on it by the time you got there.
Right.
The next building, of course, would be the Princess Theater. We have the Cherokee Hotel, which is one of the greatest things that Cleveland ever did. When they started the Chamber of Commerce, those guys says, we've got to do something to get people in Cleveland. And they built one of the finest hotels in the South right here in little old Cleveland, Tennessee. And that's actually the sign that's got the Cherokee Indian on it, which I would love to know where that's at. And, of course, you have the Cleveland National Bank coming up. And then you have Dooley's Drug Store.
Oh, don't leave Cleveland Bank and Trust out.
Well,
Cleveland Bank and Trust was a unique little bank. It was next to Cleveland National.
See, I didn't know
and
that.
you could actually enter Cleveland Bank and Trust through Cleveland National Bank. Now, I don't know exactly what the tie was. I suspect that there were some stockholders that owned stock in both of them. But anyway, and then you get to Sturgis.
What's that?
Sturgis. Sturgis was there for a number of years.
Pearson Mayfield involved in those banks?
I think so.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's funny. I had never heard that before. And then, of course, you have Dooley's. And then I don't know when.
Not Dooley's Ice Cream, Dooley's Drug Store.
Yes. And
And before Dooley's was Lusk.
Yeah.
That's right.
I ran around with Mr. Lusk's son. They called him Doc Lusk. His name was George, and he and I went to Tennessee Wesleyan together. He's deceased now.
1947, would Cooper's Bookstore be right in there too, or was
No,
it?
It's on up this way.
Yeah, next block up.
Okay.
Right. Now,
Next to the
C.J.
Bohemia.
Wilson was there almost next to Dooley Drug Store,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was two Kate men's clothing store. J.R. Kate was an older gentleman, and he, as you can see in the picture there, it was on the corner. But John Kate had Kate Brothers was across the street, and there's a restaurant sign on the corner there. Most people don't remember Bob Green's restaurant, but it was right there on that corner, and I remember it as a little boy.
It was in the hotel, the old hotel.
That's right. That's right.
The old LaCoy Hotel. And then I think we see a catering sign there. This is just one of those fabulous old postcards that somebody came through and made, and it just gives me lots of questions when I start trying to do things like this. But thank you so much, Eddie. I wanted to hear more about C.J. Wilson,
Hey.
if you know about him. We're going to get the phone here.
Good morning, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
All right, the North Cleveland grocery store. Do you remember it?
The what?
The North Cleveland grocery store.
North Cleveland Grocery Store.
Where was
it?
it located?
That was right there by the North Cleveland Baptist Church, where Brick and Hosta used to be.
Well, I remember Hamilton's. Loy Hamilton moved in there with a grocery store a long time ago. I don't remember exactly when it was.
That's back where Domino's is. That's back where Domino's is.
Domino's. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where Hamilton plays.
Right.
But North Cleveland and the grocery store is right there by North Cleveland Baptist Church, there was a parking lot where Brick and Hosta used to be.
Okay. I didn't know that. I remember
okay,
Brookins.
and now I remember a man's name being on a little grocery store in there, but I don't remember his name now.
I remember old Mr. Brooking. He was a nice
Carl.
Carl Brooking.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a military man.
fine
was.
fella.
Yes.
That's where B&B, that food store, you remember it?
B&B Food Store.
Oh yeah, there's one. There's two of them. There's one at 3 Point next to 3 Point Shell,
Yep.
and then there was one uptown, about where Earl's sandwich or restaurant is. Right in there, there was a BB Food Store.
Well-
Catholic Law managed the one uptown,
Right.
and I did know maybe Toby Taylor managed the one. Bethel Brown owned them both, and that's where the BB comes from.
Okay. All right. The original Cook's Food Store, where was that at?
The original Cooks.
The original Cooks, I think now, was on where Cleveland Bank of Cleveland is, on that corner. Before it was Cooks, I think it was a home store, and then Cooks was after the home store.
But the original Cook, it was up on Church Street. J.M. Cook. Did you know that?
You know, I think down close to the bakery.
Yeah, see, yeah.
Yeah, I think when you said that, I vaguely remember hearing that before.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being a listener. Thanks for calling in.
Okay, bye.
Down on Church Street, maybe the street behind Church Street, was maybe the original, like the real original, like a little tiny, in the side of our house original Cook's food store.
Where'd you get bicycles in your young day?
Howard Griffith Sickle Shop.
Where was that at?
Right across the street from the bank. It's Bank and Trust built a new one on the corner of Church and Inman. Right across the street, across Church Street, about the middle of the block, there was a little building there, and Mr. Howard Griffith, who was also my neighbor up on Magnolia Avenue, I remember I was about 8 years old, and I got a Swin bicycle from Howard Griffith Sickle Shop. Great. Boy, I'd like to have it today. I'd like to restore it. And
Ron had one of the Pee Wee Hermans with all the fenders and the lights and the horns and all that. We'd like to have that too.
That was Able Hardware.
Able Hardware.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Griffith, he was in that. And I think that, a lot of the Griffiths kind of splintered off and had motorcycle and all that kind of stuff. And I think all those seeds were planted through Mr. Howard Griffith. He was a great guy.
Have you been able to get up to the new Jenkins?
Yes.
Did you happen to see the pictures up on the wall?
I did.
That came out of our collection. There's a few pictures of you up there, but the one I was thinking of when we were talking is Griffith's Cycle Shop, I guess, had one. It looks like it's a early 1960s truck, and they had some kid on a tricycle sitting up on the hood in the Christmas parade. And I thought, well, you couldn't do that now. You'd be charged with endangerment to a child. But back then, we didn't know any better, I guess.
By the way, in talking about, I like to see, you can look at me and tell I like to go to new places to eat. But anyway, we have been to Jenkins, and it's a very nice place. The food was good, the service was good, and I'm glad that they're there, and I wish them well.
I liked the salad bar. That was the freshest salad bar in town. I think.
Well,
Bill Teen ate the salad bar, and I had
had
their chicken salad.
Yes.
Oh, I love their chicken salad. But that's another example of people that started out in a small business here in Cleveland, I guess 30 years ago or more.
Probably a little longer
And they
than
were
that.
up at the Cleveland Mall in a little chicken shop, and it's grown into a couple of different businesses. But to see them do the things that they've done, and they try to hang on to the history and help people here in Cleveland, and Kay has been so gracious and thankful for, our little bit of the part there, helping her round up pictures is all we did.
I really ought to. I've got a bunch of stuff like that I ought to give her. I don't know why I'm holding on to it. I've got the original drawing that the Chapman boy did of the county commission in 1982 that Hal Dixon commissioned and paid for. I've got the original one of those, and it's hanging in my pool room upstairs at my house that nobody ever goes in to see. And I've got the Homecoming '86 original painting that was done with the rocking chair and the quilt over the back
Yes,
of
I
the
love
chair.
that
I've
one.
got that. And I got all kind of pictures that I've let Wes Snyder make copies of the police department from about right after World War II through 1960. I've got a lot of stuff like that I ought to give, Kay. And
Well, we'd love to copy those police officer pictures before you give them to whoever you want to give them to. But we were just real tickled.
We got some really good pictures of your wedding too that you allowed us to use,
but see, that's where
looks like a different set of folks in
who
that
are
wedding.
those- who are those little
who are
skinny
those
young
slim,
people?
trim folks?
But it's so nice to go in there and see how that they've honored history. But
That's
now those
right.
pictures weren't necessarily our pictures. It's just that people like you loaned us pictures that we copied and
we just
and we got them out from under the bed.
We steal from the best.
Yeah, we steal from the best. No, we were just really tickled that they used those. If you want to make some old-timey memories with your kids, here's your opportunity to do that. Coming December the 6th, which will be next Friday night, they're going to do the Christmas carols and lighting of the Christmas tree downtown at 6 o'clock. And, of course, the big tree down there was planted by our friend Robert Easterly, who is passed now, became postmaster.
Postmaster.
Thank you, postmaster, about 1964, I believe, and that's one of the first things he did, I think, was plant that big old tree. But they're going to be offering free carriage rides downtown, of course, visit with Santa, and doing some caroling at the churches. 6 o'clock Friday evening, make some good old-fashioned memories, and then at 6 o'clock on the 7th, you will see the Main Street Cleveland's annual Christmas parade. I don't know how long that Christmas parade's been going on.
Well, I know the JC started it back in one in the 50s. I think they were created in 52, and one of their first projects was the Cleveland Christmas Parade. I don't know if they were doing parades before then or not.
When I was a little boy, I don't ever remember a Christmas parade.
I really think the JC's is the one that started that.
Now, we would come downtown, and a store, would have a Santa, and and you'd go in and talk.
I remember walking by. Of course, I always remembered there being a Christmas parade, but I remember walking by and see the windows decorated, and they'd cover the windows so you couldn't see them until after Thanksgiving, which drives me crazy now. It just starts me fussing that I don't do Valentine's Day in December, and I don't do Christmas in October.
Or November even.
November. We put up our Christmas tree last night, and that was exceptionally early for us.
Well, I remember one of the highlights of the Christmas season for me when I was a little boy. Two things I remember. First of all, at North Cleveland Church of God on the Sunday before Christmas, Russell Fowler owned a little store on Peoples Street, and he would, I guess, sell the church what they called a treat. It was a little brown bag, and it'd have an apple and an orange and a piece of candy and
Brazil nut.
That's
Brazil,
right.
yeah. That you never could crack.
That's right. And that I remember, we looked forward to getting our treat. And then I can remember my mother took me to Chattanooga, and the reason I remember, I guess, this today is last night on TV I saw where in the windows, the power board window in Chattanooga, they still have the little mannequins or whatever moving, and I can remember going there and thinking, boy, and the Santa'd be moving and the train'd be going around on the track, and it, as a little boy, I just stood there in amazement.
Now, how did you decide what you wanted for Christmas? When I was younger, I thought Santa sent the Sears catalog,
just
the Christmas
case.
catalog, to my house for me to pick my Christmas presents out of.
Well, that wasn't a bad way to do it.
Yeah, and I said, this is great. Santa sent out a catalog. I mean, how did you just know what you wanted, or it was?
It wasn't I always wanted one big thing. Mm-hmm. And we certainly were not rich. My daddy, as a policeman in those days, probably never made over $250 a month, but we did have enough that I got a decent Christmas present, and I can really relate to the Christmas story, but about the Red Ryder BB gun, because I well remember when I got my Red Ryder BB gun, and
I still have mine.
Ron still has his,
that's
but
wonderful.
you could.
I wish I did.
You could shoot around corners with it. We're not sure exactly what happened to it.
Well, you dove, and you're playing soldier.
It's a little bent, but it's on display at our house.
Well, we the boys in my neighborhood used them a little different than hunting the bad guys. We went hunting with them, birds. We'd shoot birds, sparrows especially, because there was plenty of those, and everybody hated the sparrows because they messed up everything, except my mama. And she didn't want me killing birds, so I didn't ever tell her that I was shooting birds. But the other one, I got that Swin bicycle, and you remember those good times, and wish I had my BB gun and my bicycle both today, but I don't have either one of them. I was not a child, I guess, that saved stuff, although I wish I had.
I had my Lionel Train.
I got one of those one year,
and I had it for a long time, and then I give it to my cousins. They just needed it, and so they put an M80 in it, drove around, blew it up. So. Yeah. It's those things that sell for $400 or $500 on eBay now, but
just
I wouldn't sell it.
Yeah.
Good morning, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Just one more thing I'd like to add, Ron.
Okay.
Back in '61, when Brady won their state championship games and all that, I think won the Cripple Crown. I think they was in the Christmas parade that year. I was about 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah, the parade started in 52, 54. Ken Harris and Harlan White and Marion Cook were all involved in those early days, I believe.
Well, it was a big deal, and we had something to be proud of because Bradley won it, and then the basketball, football, and the girls won basketball, and they was in the parade also.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. Of course, those are the days you didn't actually play for the championship. They just voted for the UPS, UPI, and AP.
Except basketball, they played for.
Yeah, they actually played basketball. That's right.
Girls and boys. I was at both the finals of those games. It was quite a year. Maybe never be duplicated again.
I don't think it will be.
Very hard to do.
But my cousin actually played with Steve Sloan. He's passed away now. His name is John Hinkle, and I never will forget them days back then. It was a real good time.
It was. It was before Cleveland High School, and we were all united behind one team, and it was a good time in our community.
Yes, it sure was. Thanks a lot.
All right,
All
thank
right.
you, Bullet.
There's an auction going on today, guys, out at Prospect Elementary School. Starting at 4 o'clock, they're going to have a barbecue dinner and a Southern gospel music, some Southern gospel music. At 5 o'clock, they're going to have an auction. I understand they have tons and tons of stuff to sell. And this is the Anchor Point Foundation. They work with people that are in jail, and when they get out of jail, help them get back into life and into a regular life. And so we'd like to support them out at Prospect Elementary School today, starting at 4 o'clock.
And don't forget to shop small business today. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
I understand Mr. Cartwright just returned from a fishing trip to Florida. I'd like to hear the details about the fish that were caught. I'm going to hang up and listen. Thank you.
Okay.
People know what you're doing, don't they?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I'm happy to report on that trip. It probably is as good a fishing trip as I ever went on. There was 8 of us. Went to Apalachicola, Florida, to Bay City Lodge, hired guides to take us out, and we did what's called flats fishing. We didn't go out in the Gulf of Mexico. We fished the brackish water.
Mm-hmm.
2 days we fished. We caught 422 fish. We had each one of them cleaned and packed and brought them home. And as a matter of fact, Charlie McDowell, a friend of mine, just had a fish fry at the homeless shelter. We fed 35 folks at the homeless shelter.
That's great.
And you're talking about folks lapping up the hush puppies and the fish. And
Now, what kind of fish is that?
all right, we caught speckled trout,
Mm-hmm.
white trout, redfish, and that basically was the 3. We caught various others.
What size fish were these normally?
Well, Wes Snyder, chief of police, was with us, and he caught the largest speckled trout I've ever seen caught. And the guide said it was the largest one. It was about 6 pounds.
Wow, that is
trout.
Really,
Yeah, it was a
that's
good
really
one.
big.
Yeah, very good.
Oh, good times there.
That's a meeting there, isn't it?
What?
A 6-pound trout's pretty good eating.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that'd feed 2 or 3 people.
But that's the report on the trip down there. We fished 2 days, and it 8 of us, and it's a great trip and a great place to stay and good seafood to eat, and of course the best oysters in the world come from Apalachicola, and we tried to eat them all.
Oh boy,
All of them.
Gosh, that sounds.
No oyster left behind.
You're listening to Whoop FM Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Once again, that number is 614-5553. We've got Eddie Cartwright here with us today, and we're talking about the way you used to shop, and it's totally different than what it is today. There was no Walmarts, literally no Walmarts, at least in Cleveland in those days.
I want to ask Eddie about C.J. Wilson. Tell me
Yeah.
about the man, C.J. Wilson.
I didn't know him much. He was a little before my time, but and I actually did not shop in his store. But what I do remember about it, I remember it was a throwback to the old way of putting merchandise out instead of having pretty display racks and all that. He had tables, and he stacked his pants up by size on tables, and shirts the same way. And when he died and it closed, and my good friend Kenneth Tinsley, who was in the antique furniture business, bought the insides of the store, the old tables and so forth, and I got one of the tables and took it to our cabin on the river, and it made a great table for the screened-in porch, and my father-in-law Milton Hornsby made some benches, and it'd seat about 12, 14 people. But C.J. Wilson was I wish I had paid more attention.
It's sort of a fancy hat too, I think, in there. Go ahead, call. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron, Debbie, and Eddie. This is Doyle Farmer.
Hey, Doyle.
Hey, Doyle.
I had a couple of things I'd like to mention. When I was going to high school, Mr. Walter Robinson had the Bradley Supply Company, and he was one of our big supporters. He had the seed, and some hardware there in the southern part of the town. Eddie remembers him.
I do.
And he was really a generous man. He had one son, I believe, John. Is he still around, Eddie?
He's deceased, I understand.
Okay, I didn't know for sure. I think he played basketball for Bradley. And but anyway, he was a great supporter for the young people in Cleveland and Bradley County. And a couple of other things, back there on the northwest corner of where the old post office was, there was, or where it is, really, there was a barber shop, West Side Barber Shop.
Mr. Matthews.
Well, Yank Matthews.
That's right.
Was one of the barbers, and another fellow by the name of Joe Sales. And then there was the Ramsey brothers, I guess, and they later branched off and built their own shop. But that was really a
next door to that barber shop was Hawks Plumbing.
That's right. Hawks Plumbing was right by the side of it. Just two small compartments side by side, and they had 4 or 5 chairs in that barber shop. And they must have cut 200 head of hair there on Friday and Saturday. Nobody went to sleep in the chair. They were like a peeled onion when they got through. But anyway, I think Darwin Matthews might have worked there just a little bit before they built the village, and then they had a barber shop there, and he moved down to the village barber shop for several years. And one more thing, Eddie, you remember Dobson's?
Yes, right there where Stampers is.
Yes.
Yes.
That was a clothing store mainly, I guess, where people went, and just before school, it would always be packed out with people in there buying school clothes.
Right. And
J.C. Penney's was another popular spot for people on about them. But anyway, there's a lot of history and a lot of memories there about dear old Cleveland.
Right.
And thank you all for taking my call.
Thanks,
Doyle.
Good to talk to you, Doyle.
Okay, see you.
Bye-bye.
On the screen now, I want to change the subject a little bit. Now, men used to wear hats, too. Then, did your dad wear a hat?
My dad wore a hat, and I wore a hat, and I sold hats right next door to where we are this morning in the Village Men's Shop.
We're going to, after the break here at 11 o'clock, we're going to switch down here to the mall and just develop some. But grocery shopping was a little bit different. Up here on the screen right now, I have Stewart Park Grocery, which was over on 17th, right?
Yes.
The building's still there. Now, that was you had a lot more neighborhood-type groceries back then.
That was a supermarket. We thought that was a great big store.
Well, then some place like Toby's was one of them, right?
Yes.
And
Callaway's,
and then, of course, Cook's. I guess it was a little later, wasn't it? Well,
Cook started in 1936.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't realize that was, okay.
Yeah, on their sign, they advertise since 1936. Now, I don't know what all locations they had leading up to.
I remember the corner up here.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning.
Hey, Bernice.
Yeah, my man wears a Korean cap. He don't wear a hat.
But you do remember when my dad had work hats and he had dress hats.
And straw hats.
And straw hats, yep.
Yeah, I do. My daddy wore them. He wore them a long time ago. I'm enjoying the program. Now, they used to be Miss Cappy that sold material out on Spring Place Road.
Yes, absolutely. And boy, she was serious about it too, wasn't she?
Yes, and I bought a lot of material from her because I used to do a lot of sewing, but I can't see to sew no more, Debbie.
Well, you know, the thing, Bernice, now is like you go to Hobby Lobby to buy material, and all they've got's the craft kind of stuff.
I know.
I don't think anybody makes clothes much anymore, but now I have in my lifetime made lots of clothes.
Well, I made my 2 girls' clothes. I used to make all of my clothes, and that was what we wore, what we made.
Because I could buy material and make a much nicer outfit than I could buy for the same amount of money.
That's right. You're right, Debbie.
And my grandma would make stuff on that pedal sewing machine.
Yeah.
She'd just fly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. But I love you guys.
Love you too, Miss Bernice.
Thank you, hon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Somebody online here is mentioning uptown there was Abel's and Law's Canterbury Shop and Harshbarger and Stratton's. And that's
Well, before Law's Canterbury Shop, right next to Abel's was Tom Law Menswear, and that was Jimmy Law's daddy. And then Jimmy Law got in the business and ended up where Callaway Grocery was, up on the corner of Central Avenue and Ocoee Street.
We need someone just to draw a map of time things, saying this is where things is, and then flip the map over and see where it is today, because I get confused about where all these are. There's so much there, but such great memories. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hello, Ron, Debbie.
Hey, Miss Ella. Where you been?
I'm resting.
What'd she say? Resting.
Resting.
I thought you said arrested.
Yeah.
I was up
She'd
at
been to Pokies again.
Miss Ella.
That's why she's resting.
Miss Ella, I was up at the hospital the other night, and they had an Ella alert. And it's apparently someone that either had run off or something, but I got kind of tickled that they were calling it an Ella alert.
Oh, well, I don't know. Anyway, I had fun last night. That place was packed out.
Well, how many beers do you drink last night?
3.
Oh.
You'll get that vertigo messed up again, Miss Ella.
Oh, no.
Well, you know, one good thing about the cold weather, Miss Ella.
I hate it.
You know, but there's a good thing about it. Them men's up there on the upper part of where you live at, they probably don't have their shirts off now.
No, but they still are up there. I still say they have cameras up there because it looks like they're taking pictures.
Well, keep your shades pulled down.
Oh, I do. I do. Anyway, I just thought I'd call in.
Thanks,
All right,
Miss
Miss
Ella.
Ella.
Bye-bye.
Go.
They put another picture of me on the Facebook. Yes, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I run out of groceries and didn't have enough to keep my sugar up. It got real low at 66. And I went down to the Salvation Army to see if I could get some groceries. And they didn't have much. But this lady, she was going to take me to Church of God. She says, well, why don't I just buy you groceries? And I said, well, I'd like to pay you back, you know. She didn't buy me groceries. And we didn't save a lot. And she took a picture of me getting groceries. And you'll never guess who it was.
Who it was?
Sheriff Snyder's wife.
Oh.
Chief Snyder's wife. Well, that was real sweet of her.
Yeah, she knew me too. She said, I recognize you from somewhere. I said, yeah, the radio.
Thank you, dear.
All right.
Good luck to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Her name is Melody, right?
Snyder's, I don't know.
Wes Snyder's wife is.
You know, I wanted to mention something else too, and I think that's the good thing about Cleveland is people take care of people, but we have to kind of acknowledge the passing of Ira Cox a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then also we lost another community leader, I believe it was 2 years ago, is Gene Truitt about this time on Thanksgiving. And I just wanted to acknowledge those families and say that.
Good. Grocery shopping. I mean,
Well, right, Stewart Park Grocery.
Oh, yeah, let's go
When
back to what that looked like on the
Miltine
inside.
and I married, we traded at Stewart Park Grocery, and we bought our groceries there on the credit and paid once a month.
mm-hmm.
and we thought it was the ultra modern. Well, it was grocery store of the day, but I really enjoyed. And I believe even in those days, I believe the Watsons owned it, because I remember Mrs. Watson, Jerry and Joe and Jack and all of them's mom, she worked in there. She ran the cash register.
I remember them being down on Wildwood too.
Yes. Joe married my niece.
Okay.
And he ran that one on Wildwood for a lot of years. Of course, he had heart attack, I guess, and he's deceased now, but he was certainly a good guy.
I know that the word that you traded with them.
Yeah.
And now we shop there, but you traded with them. I remember my dad. We traded at Cook's.
Right.
Well, and when you walked in there, everybody knew who you were.
Right.
You was,
right.
Instead of what you get now at Walmart.
And that's and I certainly am not critical of any business, but the reason I do my banking at a certain bank is because there are local people in there, and I can go in and somebody will holler at me and ask me how I'm doing, and they know Milteen's had some health problem. How's Milteen doing? And all that kind of stuff. And I'm old enough, I guess, that it still means something to me, rather than just going in and being a number and somebody giving you good service and you go on your way. I'd rather. Well, my wife gets a little upset at me. She said, you can spend more time at the grocery store than anybody I've ever seen. She said, you stop and talk to everybody in the aisle. Well, I know most of them, and I enjoy hearing about them, what they're doing and what their family's doing. And, that's part of life to me.
Ron and I shopped yesterday for about 2 hours, and about an hour and 45 minutes of that was talking, and about 15 minutes was shopping.
Yeah,
But we had a good time. We saw people we hadn't seen in years.
A lot of friends, and we, of course, enjoy people who listen to the show come up to us and talk about the show, and next thing you know, we're just dying laughing in the middle of the aisle somewhere, something somebody said, or, of course, everybody enjoys Miss Ella's stories. And
the story always is Miss Ella real? The question is always, is Miss Ella, oh, yeah, she's real? She's the real deal.
Well, I said on Facebook how much good this show, and especially this lady sitting here, and I guess Ron deserves a little credit too.
I push buttons.
But Debbie's the real deal.
Yes.
She really is. It's
you should
great
see my room full of dead people, Eddie.
It's great that somebody though is kind of keeping us tuned in to our past.
It's unbelievable the research that she can do. And go ahead, caller, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
I want to know what y'all are talking about today.
Just whatever comes to our mind.
We're talking about shopping before it was Amazon and Black Fridays and Brown Thursdays, back in the good old days when everybody knew who you was.
And who's the guy sitting in there with you?
Eddie Cartwright, former county executive of Bradley County.
Meet Red, Eddie.
One more question.
Well, I hear her sometimes on Whoop calling in and talking to in the afternoon. What's that show, that off-brand show that's on Whoop in the afternoon?
Fro Daddy.
Fro Daddy. I hear some stuff occasionally on there when I'm in my car.
Do what?
It gets pretty bad, don't it?
It does.
It's different.
Hey, Ron.
Yes, ma'am.
Today's the last day that Georgia's going to play. You wouldn't want to bet, would you?
No. They're playing Georgia Tech.
I thought they dropped football down there at Georgia.
Well, they
I didn't think you would be sitting there looking at you.
Now, it doesn't cost me one shirt last time, I bet you. But now, let me just point something out to you, Red, since you brought this up. Now, Georgia, Eddie said they dropped football. If they had dropped the football, they'd beat Auburn. But instead of dropping it, they knocked it up into the air, and the Auburn guy caught it and ran for a touchdown. What happened there, Brad?
They done better in Tennessee anyway.
I could do better in Tennessee.
That's true. We weren't talking about Tennessee, though.
Okay, I just wanted to know what y'all.
Well, Red, where did you used to shop when you were younger? When you was a kid, where did you go to? What kind of store did you go to get your groceries?
We went to L&J.
What was in L&J?
Oh, Penland's Grocery.
Very interesting.
I bet that was right on 411, wasn't it?
Nope, it's right down below town.
Okay.
I was down in town.
Probably on Highway 52.
No, 515 was
515, Zell Miller Mountain Parkway.
right.
All right, Red.
Thank you, Red.
Where'd you buy your corn for that other stuff?
To make the whiskey.
I ain't telling that. You don't tell that.
Well, did you drink it from a fruit jar?
Yeah.
All right. Grow hair on your chest, somebody said.
It would remove it, too.
I'm not going to say one way or the other.
You know, somebody told me if you took moonshine and poured it right along the edge of your sidewalk there, that the grass, it would kill the grass, it'd be an edger. But if you got some on the concrete, you'd also eat the concrete.
That moonshine doesn't make that grass grow.
Just think what it'd do to your stomach.
Thanks, Miss Red. Bye-bye, darling.
See you, Red.
Somebody came in and brought us some one day. Our listeners have heard this before. And I made a rum cake, used my rum cake recipe, and it melted the batter. It looked like one big pancake. It couldn't rise with all that whiskey in it.
So we brought it down to the Fro Daddy show, and Matador squeezed the juice out of it and drank it.
And also, you usually cook the rum for 2 minutes with some sugar in it, and it cooks most of the alcohol out. Well, I couldn't cook the alcohol out of that, so Matador got drunk eating cake.
Talking about that, and Jimmy Corn told me this story himself, so I don't guess it's too bad to tell. He and a friend was going to go hunting up at Fontana, and they had to get in a boat and go across the lake to where they were going to hunt. I don't know. They may have been bear hunting. I don't know, deer hunting, whatever. And Jimmy said he had on a pea coat and said he had a bottle in each pocket in the front, and said he took he got in operating the motor and all, the coat was kind of bulky, and he took it off and laid it down, and this friend of his dropped his shotgun on the coat and broke both bottles. And Jimmy said in that cold weather, trying to wring that stuff out of that wool coat so we'd have some antifreeze to stay warm was a real job. So
let's go back to the hat thing. Where all could a man buy a dress hat? Someone online mentioned McDarris's.
McDarris Brothers was one of the leading men's shops.
Now, was there, I would imagine there was real trick to get one that would fit and...
Well, they usually, when I had the Village Men's Shop, I sold Adams hats. And we had a revolving rack. And we would buy only about 2, maybe 3 styles. But we'd buy a dozen of each one. And we'd have various and sundry sizes. And you just come in and
tried them on.
Tried it on. Had a mirror up on the top of that rack, and you'd try it on, look at it, and if it fit you and you liked it, why, I remember they were $9.95. And
now, was that expensive at the time, or
no? That
medium?
was kind of the middle of the road. Now, Stetson was more expensive than Adam. Adam was more a middle price hat. But we sold a lot of hats. And that would have been, I opened a store up here when the Village opened in 61. And so that was in 61 we were selling Adams hats.
Well, when we come back from break here in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the vision for the Village and how a lot of you local folks ended up down here running shops.
And how shopping started to change in Bradley County with the building of this mall, right?
That's right.
And, you know, and then we still, thank goodness, have some businesses that have survived the times, like Stampers. I believe they're celebrating 80-something years being in business, not necessarily in that one location, but they've been there a long time.
You know somebody would be great to come in and do this show? Joe Stamper.
Joe Stamper runs for the back corner every time I go in because he knows that I'll say, "How are you, Joe? When are you going to be on the show?"
We need.
Well, he'd be a good one.
We need to get Wes Snyder and his handcuffs to go by there and handcuff Joe and bring him down here Saturday morning and handcuff him to the mic stand.
And while Wes is here, let him tell you the fish story about him standing on the bow of the boat.
Uh-oh. We've got a caller.
Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning. I've got a Stuart Park grocery story.
Go right ahead. Who are we talking to?
Pat.
Yeah, it's Pat Gifford.
Okay, I recognize you now. Go ahead, Pat.
When I was about 6 years old, I lived up on Harrell Avenue, and one of my neighbors, Frankie Morrow, sent me to the store to get her a head of lettuce. I came back with a head of cabbage.
Well, that was close. It's same color.
And she never sent me again.
Well, I think that you probably made the mistake that a lot of men have made.
Well, have you got any Rando Tinsley stories?
Well, I, of course, knew Mr. Tinsley well most of my life. He was a barber downtown, and he's a good guy, but he just gave about one kind of haircut, and that was called the peeled onion. And you go in there, and I remember when it was a quarter. And then it was 50 cents, and boy, went up to $1, and everybody thought he joined the union because it went up to $1. But anyway, he was a true Bradley County character. And the day he closed up down there, it was a sad day. It was really a sad day.
Where was his barbershop at?
You remember where Zane Harris had his real estate office uptown?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That little hole in the wall?
Yeah.
He's next door.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right there on, I guess that's First Street.
Yeah, the last thing they had in there was some kind of skate shop or something, some
May
guy.
have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a trader, a musician, a blacksmith, a farmer. He done everything.
And he could tell you more stories than you ever heard in your life.
Well, that's part of being a barber, too, is that you can entertain everybody. Thanks, Pat. Thanks for listening, buddy. Bye-bye. Folks, we're going to take a little break here, and we'll be back with you in just a few moments.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
You need money overnight? Check into cash. Your time is tight. .com. Bank account's too low? Check into cash. So where do you go? .com. Do it online in a record time. It's the easy way to get money next day. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. Just stay in the house, check into cash, and grab your mouse.com. Get your money online, check into cash, right on time.com. You can be sure it's secure from our bank straight to yours. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. No time to get away, check into cash. You gotta stay home.com. Hey, that's okay, check into cash. You can do it alone.com. Any old time, do it online. Just stay in the house and grab your mouse. Do a quick click from home. Get your money overnight at the right website. Do a quick click from home. Go to checkintocash.com.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
You may know Mermaid Mattress has won the Reader's Choice Survey taken by the Cleveland Daily Banner, voting Mermaid the #1 place to buy a mattress in Cleveland. But did you know they've also won every year they've voted in Dalton by the readers of the Dalton Daily Citizen? And every year they have taken the North Georgia Chattanooga Times Free Press Best of the Best Survey. And now for the 12th time for the Times Free Press Best of the Best Survey in Chattanooga. Roger wants to say thanks to all the area voters in each and every survey in the area for making Mermaid Mattress the #1 place to make your next mattress purchase. Mermaid Mattress, Georgetown Road, Cleveland. Call 472-2486.
Mermaid Mattress Factory and Showroom.
Kiesler Incorporated is in the business of recycling your metal, and they pay cash. The only covered scrapyard around where you can recycle rain or shine. They're located off the bypass on Overhead Bridge Road. Automobiles, appliances, copper, stainless steel, tin, all metals can be recycled at Kiesler, and you can walk away with cash. That's right, they pay cash, and they are the friendliest scrapyard in the Southeast. If you have unwanted metal just laying around, bring it to Kiesler Recycling today and walk away with cash. Kiesler Recycling open Monday through Saturday, 7:30 to 5, or call for more details, 614-3000.
Hey now, this is Tommy Jett. Ever wonder what WWW stands for? It stands for Worldwide Whoop, streaming live around the world on whoopfm.com. And now on we go with a musical show on Down Beat, 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 Beat.
Welcome back to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. We got a caller.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, I'm talking about Rando Tinsley there. When he left downtown, he went out there. He opened up a little shop in a trailer behind his house out there on Harrison Pike. And it was very informal. You just pulled up in front of the trailer, and he'd come out of the house and open the shop up, you know. He didn't get a lot of business there. Just very seldom you ever had to wait, you know. He'd come out and cut your hair. But he operated that till he died, I reckon, or right before he died. But he was still cutting hair when he's 90-something years old, I think.
Well, Lightning Whaley out on Spring Place did the same thing. I believe he was well up into his 90s, and he was still giving those 1950 buzz haircuts.
Yeah. Out there at Rando's, I saw the oldest piece of literature where you'd have to sit and wait, you know. He had some books out there, and I was looking through one of them. It was a school book from 1909 that somebody gave him. You know, that was a reading material.
There you go.
You know, a magazine 20 years old is not much, you know. But talking about stores up there, did you mention Davis's clothing store up there?
No, but now I understand Davis's was in two different locations downtown, and one of them they had the name in the little ceramic tiles where you went in the store.
Had a modern-looking front on it for its day.
It did. My mother used to like to go up there, and she'd look through the window. And they had 2 stories, and the upper part up there, they had a window that faced on Ocoee Street there.
That's right.
They'd always have a real nice dress or outfit on the model up there, you know. And that was real popular. I always thought that was a real high-class place, and for a little boy, there wasn't a whole lot to look at in there, you know, but my mother liked the place. Now, but talking about other little stores there, did you mention, of course, Kresge's? It was down at the Village. And there used to be a Coons. It was up there on Ocoee Street, right across from the courthouse there. Those were dime stores.
Yeah, that Coons was next to Cooper's Bookstore.
Yeah, and that was a popular place. A kid going there was 50 cents or less than $1, you know, he could buy some stuff to play with, you know, and very, very popular there. And then I think that was probably owned by Kmart, because I know Kresge's was a division of that, and I just figured they might have been all related there a little bit, you know. But you know, back at one time in the late 50s, before the Village opened up, there were 2 distinct areas in Cleveland. You know, go shopping. You had uptown around the courthouse, and Five Points down there, and they were kind of competing with each other just a little bit. And there was Lay's had a store down there at 5 Points, and several restaurants down there, and all kinds of stuff.
Yep. Well, thanks, Larry, for calling in.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, you know, we have to mention, too, that while we had downtown, on the east side of the tracks, the African-American community had a whole community over there.
Yeah.
They had the cleaners, and they had the restaurants and grocery stores. They had
everything.
Easy
Ready Cafe?
Ever Ready.
Did
you ever go to the Ever Ready, Eddie?
No. My dad used to tell stories about some of the calls the local police department would get.
They said some of the best fried chicken. Now that's Vice Mayor's grandmother.
Yeah,
Vice Mayor
Avery's.
Johnson.
Right.
And they made let me get it right, meatloaf sandwiches.
Sandwich, yeah. A friend just sent me a text, says that he opened his first charge account at Stewart Park July 1973, and he hasn't been out of debt since.
Yeah.
Who sent that?
A friend.
A friend.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Anonymous friend.
And we have to mention downtown too. You know, we still have Joe Rogers in business, and that business has been there quite a while.
He'd be a good guy to get on the show, wouldn't he?
And
well, the Joe that opened that business up is deceased. But
and
Joe
Otto was his grandfather.
no, that's Stampers. We're talking about Joe Rogers.
Rogers, okay.
Get with us,
excuse me.
Ron.
Oh,
talking about the village, and that's a whole
Show in itself.
show.
yeah, we've done a village show.
Well, Jimmy Corn, of course, came up with the idea of building a shopping center, and Cleveland had never had one.
Now, was this a craze around the country? I mean,
shopping centers were springing up, evidently.
Well, and was that because they wanted to just have that centralized purchase?
They wanted to make money.
That's right.
Make
the
money, okay.
folding of the dollar.
The folding of the dollar. But we have to understand in his younger years.
It was a money thing.
Jimmy Corn was also involved in the raising of the Cherokee Hotel, right?
Jim Corn
Senior. This is Junior. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you.
But the way in 1960, Bill Ledford, the county commissioner, and I opened up Cleveland Men's Shop at 5 Point.
Mm-hmm.
And our lead advertisement gimmick was 3 pair of pants for $10. And we sold a lot of them. But along about the time, we opened up about 1960, and about the end of that year, I saw a little red Corvette pull up out in front. Well, you know, not many people driving a red Corvette was at 5 Point shopping, and this fella got out dressed really well, and it was Jimmy Corn Jr. And he came in the little store and looked around, and as I remembered, he bought a pair of socks. That's kind of strange. I knew who he was, but he didn't know who I was, other than as he's paying for the socks, he said, young man, you wouldn't be interested in moving this store down to the village, would you? Well, I wasn't interested. I'd never even thought about it. But I started thinking, and ended up that Bill Ledford and I put the Village Men's Shop in down here, and we were in this little mall going down to the barber shop. And Jack Culzer had opened up the Village Cafeteria right across the mall from us. And the eye doctor that's out here on 20th and Keith now, Walter Peterson, had opened up the eye place there, and sales was right up the mall on the corner of the big mall. But anyway, we stayed there for a couple of years, and then we moved down. I'm not sure. I don't think we were in this space, maybe the space next to Whoop Radio, and we stayed there until I sold out in 64 and went to Charleston as a basketball coach and got out of the retail business. But Jimmy Corn and his father and Joe Rogers Sr. and Marshall Wallace, they were kind of the people that ran the village. Jimmy, of course, was the major stockholder and owned it. And Marshall took care of maintenance. Joe Rogers took care of the leasing and all that. And then Jean Schenck, redheaded lady, was the merchant's representative. She kept all kind of shows and events and all that stuff going on. And there was something going on in the village all the time. It was really a happening place. It opened in August of 1961.
I believe that Joe Rogers Jr. came on and did our show about the village, and he had huge scrapbooks that was nothing but the advertising.
Right. Well, they
for the
had
village.
old-fashioned bargain
it
days
was so
and
fun.
all that stuff. It was really, and one of the things one of the biggest things they had was when they brought in the organ grinder and the monkey. I mean, kids lined up the whole length of the mall. And that little monkey was sitting on their shoulder and picking stuff out of their pocket and all that kind of stuff. It was, and then
everybody talks about that monkey, but I've yet to have anybody come up with a decent picture of it.
What about the bird?
Well, Joe Stewart had a little place right down on the far end next to the White Food Store, and that I'm not going to say Miss Joe taught it its language, but somebody did. It probably had been in the Navy.
It had colorful language.
Well, definitely, or the Marine Corps.
Yeah, the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
It did.
For those
you
of
could
you
go in there and they'd say, "What do you say, you?"
Yeah.
SOB, except it wouldn't use the
right, or he'd whistle.
Oh yeah,
the wolf whistles at the women.
Oh yeah, yeah. And was everybody'd go in there just to see what it was saying. And
talking about great events, the JCs, back from the 50s forward, they had their chicken barbecue on July 4th down here by the creek, and they had all kind of games set up, and they sold barbecue chicken and coleslaw, and then that night they'd have the fireworks afterwards. The JCs run that all day. I remember we brought in the dynamite guy. You've probably seen it on TV where he lays down and he puts dynamite on his head and he blows himself up. Well, we did that, and it cost us $100 to get him here, and he blew himself up first time he used a half a stick, then he used a whole stick, then he used 2, then finally
he'd shake the ground.
And he used 4 sticks of dynamite, and of course he had a girl run out, and he would lay there and like he was dead, then he'd jump up and run around through there. I'm going, I don't know if I ever heard anything I ever said though. But we blew up a guy here, and then we greased one of the poles out here and put $100 bill on it. Anybody could climb one of the poles. The liability now, you couldn't do this. We started saying this. We should have just left a coupon up there, because we had to get the fire department to come down and put the $100 bill. Then we had to come get it down. It says we should just put a coupon up there, because no one ever got close. But
although people tried.
Well, they'd get 4 or 5 of them up on their shoulders, and they'd be terrible.
Eddie, do you remember like on Sunday afternoons or something, they would have like go-kart races in the parking lot?
Yes, get bales of straw and line up. It was on the east side. See, when the village opened, the Parks Belt, what later was the Parks Belt building, wasn't there.
Right.
And there was and the reason there wasn't anything there was a big outcropping of rock. And it took forever to get all that rock out of there. And they probably worked a year after the center opened, getting that all leveled out and where you could use it and all that. But it was really a happening place, and at night stayed open till 9 o'clock at night, and there was always something going on, and a lot of people shopped, and a lot of people don't know this, but some that are a little older might remember it. There was a pretty good feud going on between downtown Cleveland and the village. As a matter of fact, one of the banks was into it with the Corn family over moving down here because they felt like it was taking business away from downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the bankers supposedly made a statement, said, in 6 months, the federal government will be storing grain in that building.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then when the bowling alley opened, man, that's a big deal. Cleveland.
I still have my little bowling pin keychain that I got the day the bowling alley opened.
Oh man, had a little restaurant down there, and they served tater tots with everything instead of French fries, and that was kind of a different take. Had good milkshakes, hamburgers, and tater tots, and I ate a lot of lunches down there when I had the store down here. And of course, Kresge's had a little lunch counter. I remember Miss Ingram worked over there.
Coles,
Dr. North managed Coles. He was the pharmacist.
Great patty melt.
Yes, and great milkshakes.
Yes.
The ice cream, that huge tall ice cream thing for 29 cents or something.
Well, which one was it? Jack Sprat's? Was that at Coles or Kresge's?
That's Kresge's.
It was a happening place, no question. And there was a hardware store first, right across the mall here on the corner, and I've forgotten the name of the guy that ran it, but Colonel Corn owned a part of it, and it did not do well, and it was only there a couple of years, and they had a going out of business sale and sold it out. But Miller's anchored one end where Alan Jones's enterprises are, and White Food Store anchored the other end.
Mm-hmm.
We had asked Jackie Hooper to be on with us today for lots of reasons. First of all, because he's got a great memory and he remembers all the old stores around Cleveland. But one thing that I wanted him to talk about, and he's promised me that he'll come back on a day that he's going to be in town and talk about it, is he helped pour the concrete for this place.
There's a lot.
$1.25 an hour, as he recalls, working all summer or for a long time pouring concrete.
There's a lot of concrete here.
Yeah.
The ceiling out here is just amazing. That the mall is not enclosed, but that archway across there, just solid concrete through there.
I really think that we probably could get this place on the registry of historic places because it has not been. It's been altered, but still that basic concrete structure is so unique. That you couldn't afford to do this.
You'd have to have dynamite to change all that.
Well, we had the big tornadoes in 2011. Fro Daddy was live on the air watching the radar, telling people where to get, and he said he wasn't the least bit concerned because he was sitting under a big rock.
Well, that's
now,
true.
This was a hill almost, wasn't it?
Yes.
They had to cut the hill
American
down.
Legion was on this hill.
Right.
Yeah, I remember Willis Baker kind of in the day helped run the Legion. Willis, good friend of mine. We played a lot of golf together, but he was the manager.
Now, was he later a city policeman also?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
I think too, Christmas at the Village changed.
Big Bob Orr was Santa Claus, and he's a great big guy.
Oh, we know Bobby.
Well, that's his dad.
Oh, that's his dad. Okay.
His dad.
Oh, well, Bobby's
that
pretty...
may be where I can get a Santa house picture. They had a great Santa house, and I'd always get Mrs. Santa was a beautiful woman, and they always had a heater inside the Santa house, which I thought was funny. But they would set up out here and talk to the kids in the mall where it was, you were in the middle of the traffic, but it wasn't free from being cold out there. And they bring Santa in what they called a helicopter.
Right.
Whose helicopter was that? It was no bigger than a mosquito. And I have a picture of it on our Old Town Cleveland Facebook, and I wouldn't get in that thing for anything. And they had a big St. Bernard dog one year pulling a little cart. I guess that the Snow Princess or somebody was riding in it. And then when they brought Bob Brandy to town, it was like a rock star was here.
Oh, yes.
We have pictures that from...
I remember he had a good-looking wife.
Yeah.
Ingrid. His grandson lives here in Cleveland.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, Mark Brandenburg. Lives, I think, up off Peerless Road. I've talked to him on Facebook. Try to get him to maybe call in someday. But yeah, his.
Well, I remember Bob Brandy's wife had an accent.
They were German. Yeah, Brandy was actually Brandenburg was his name, and they were all German. And he was, but now she was. Let's right off the boat, more German.
Hey. He played a guitar, he had a horse, and he had a pretty wife.
Well,
there you go. He had everything.
In a TV show. And,
but now, the pictures of the crowds when Bob Brandy
and
was
he had a bad toupee.
Yeah, very bad. The Easter egg hunts, do you remember those? They would cover the parking lot with hay and put, I guess, plastic eggs underneath the hay, and the kids would come out and run across that asphalt to find it.
The shopping changed a lot because now it was centralized, and down here you had Margaret's. Was one of the things in your store, and then there's a Sears store down here on the corner, wasn't there?
Yes, it was a catalog store.
Right.
I tell you who had an office in the front window and sold Allstate insurance. Bill Creech.
That's right, yeah. I forgot.
That's where I met Bill Creech.
I think in the past when the stores were downtown, you had more the JCPenney's that had everything store. And then when you came to the Village Mall, you had women's dress shop, and you had kids' clothes, and you had men's clothes, and it was more
Hobby Lobby.
And the Hobby Lobby,
which was right here,
Mr. White.
Yeah.
We lost Mr. White in the last year, and matter of fact, he had talked to me probably last fall and was going to come on and be on the show. He got diagnosed with cancer, and they lost him 3 or 4 months later.
Was it the Hobby Mart or Hobby Lobby? It's Hobby
Mart.
Mart, yeah. Hobby Lobby's up on the other.
Then you had one of these stalls about where we are had Tots to Teens.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. W.W. Brewster and her son Warren and his wife Patty ran that.
Now, did Annabelle White have her...
Annabelle White had a store in here.
Now, it was more of a wedding shop?
Well, it was A lot of custom-made stuff, and I believe she sold.
Custom-made? I didn't realize that.
Oh, Annabelle White, when I was in high school, all the girls at any kind of a basketball banquet where they wore formals and stuff, Annabelle White was the lady that made the dresses.
See, I didn't realize that, so they weren't ready-made.
No.
Oh, my.
Oh. Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
I'd like to talk to someone, but not about what you're talking about today.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to see y'all do a tribute on the old doctors in Cleveland and Polk County, Dr. McCollum and all those old doctors.
Well, we have thought of that, but we haven't found anybody that would agree to be our guest yet that really has enough knowledge to talk for 2 hours.
Okay.
But we think that would be a great show too.
Is any
So if
the older doctors around that's retired that we could get?
Get some of the families of the doctors, Dr.
Yeah.
McCollum's daughter or maybe son or some of them to come on.
Dr. Prophet's family? Yeah.
But we would love to, and we have talked about that many times and wanted to talk about the hospitals before Bradley Memorial and the doctors and what a difference that was in how people were treated and got treatments and all that.
There was Speck Hospital and PNS,
You got doctors in Polk County, a lot of old doctors over there years ago. People probably remember, I don't know any of those.
Yeah, you have the older guys, too, like the Cochran guys that were back in the early 1900s, too, that, 2 or 3 people in that family were doctors. And it's a pretty interesting story that a lot of women were delivering all the babies and doing all that right before the 1900s. And when they passed the state law that you had to have a license to, deliver a baby or whatever, a lot of them just quit doing it.
Well,
that'd be good to get some people on there to talk about that also.
Yes.
It would. Well, yeah, we'll like I say,
we're always working on something.
Finding somebody, our next show's just to tell you real quick. Next week, pretty interesting. Dr. Hood from UTC, who's an expert on Appalachian culture, is going to come in and talk about the Appalachian people in this area, and of course, he is also an expert on snake handling churches too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So we think that's going to be fun. And then the next week, our friend Doug Mizell is going to be hosting the show, so we can have a day off, and he's going to be talking about
some
pre-removal Cherokee history or Native American history from this area, trying to line up some folks on that.
And then on December 21st, it's just a total fun show. We're going to talk about favorite Christmas movies, and we're going to have an argument what is the greatest Christmas movie and who's the greatest Christmas movie star.
That sounds great.
I mean, so
I may have to break up fights that day.
Oh, I mean, we got Arnold Tarpley and Renee, his wife's going to come with him, and they can, there's some opinionated people when you get to Christmas movies.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
the suggestion. We hope more people call in like you do. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay. I remember the big fashion shows that Margaret's had.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They would put up a little platform out here in the mall and parade kids and people around.
Well, apparently that shopping then changed, and in downtown Westfire, they'd done that. Keith Street was being built at the same time too. Sort of a combination, sort of a brilliant move by Mr. Corn, Jimmy Corn Jr. to this new road coming through here, which was going to divert the traffic away from downtown, and the shopping was going to be here, and then this new concept, and people flooded. This parking lot was full all the time, and it apparently worked. But they had the Amigo days in downtown Cleveland,
Right.
and they brought in the Cisco Kid,
Right.
Ronaldo Duncan, and brought him in and he come along, and he went to the courthouse, and I seen a picture with him and Bob Easterly together, and Lisa Pemberton, that we all went to church with out here, Lisa McMahon at that time. I had a picture of her. She was in Speck Hospital, and he went up and visited her, and we've got a picture. Now, it's not a great picture, but, we've seen that.
Well, I'll tell you something else. It was a big day down here. When they had old-fashioned bargain days, Joe Rogers and Gene Shank had come around, and they'd encourage all the clerks and the owners to dress as their forefathers had dressed many years ago, and they would encourage everybody to move merchandise out in the mall. And, man, it looked like
a yard sale.
It did. I mean, stuff. And it was hard for Zales Jewelry Store to move stuff out in the mall.
Yeah.
You know, but I tell you what their claim to fame was, and I hope she won't get mad at me over this, but they had Miss Cleveland working over there, and of course all the guys in the mall had always looked that way Jeannie Swafford, she's Jeannie Beavers now, and she's on Facebook, and I sent her she was talking about how thankful she was for stuff, and I said, and folks, you might not know, but that she was Miss Cleveland and was a very nice looking, good girl, and she was, and still is, of course. But Herb Tasman, Jewish friend of mine, managed Zales, and I guarantee you, Herb wasn't no fool. He hired Jeannie, and that drew traffic in Zales. But it was a fun time. There's no question about it. I didn't make any money. I actually lost some money down here, but it was a fun time.
Now, White Food Store, was that a chain or just a local?
Came from Knoxville, as I understand it.
So, Ron, where'd you buy your 8-track tapes down here?
Kresge's.
Yeah.
Kresge's? There was a music shop here, too, wasn't there?
Well, Kresge's had they had that big counter, lock counter there.
Kresge's had about everything.
Yeah, that's where I bought most of my. Now, then later on, I bought it at Jerry's Record Shop on up the road up here where right behind where Stone Cyphers had his dentist shop in there.
Yeah.
It was Jerry Inslee had a little record shop in there.
Did.
And now that's where I went and got a lot of stuff too, because I custom ordered all my stuff there. I'd go in there and he says, "Have you heard this new stuff?" And so he turned me on to different type of music every week. And so I bought one new 8-track every week. That was my goal when I worked, is to be able to buy one 8-track a week. And that was, so I had a great collection, and just very different type music, and of course run into a lot of musicians down there, and so a lot of fun.
Well, the village was way ahead of its time, and and my having been down here made my initial contact with Jimmy Corn, and then later, when I was director of public works, Jimmy came to see me one day and asked me if I'd be interested in looking after the chalet. He was in the process of building the chalet, and Joe Rogers Jr. had taken the job, but for whatever reason didn't like it and was gonna leave, and I told him I'd go out and look, and we talked, and that was the beginning of a great relationship.
Now, how long was you at the chalet?
Let me think about it.
20 years?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, well, it was a great place,
69 is when it opened, and I either came the last of 69 or the first of 1970.
I remember Archie Campbell being there.
Yeah, and then I ran for county executive in 82, but I still maintained most folks didn't know, but I kept my stock and maintained a relationship with the chalet and Jafco, which was Jimmy's company. But Jimmy Corn allowed me on company time to try my wings at a lot of different things, and he was really good to me, and I did get to go see him 2 days before he died. He had I think he had prostate cancer, but whatever, and he was in a nursing home. And
how long's it been since he's dead?
As I've gotten older, time goes by faster.
Yeah, I know.
And I can't answer that. I don't know. The Liars Table was meeting at Shawnee's at the time, and we've been gone from there, I know, 6-7 years. So it's been a while.
Ron always says 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, the so-and-so happened, and it's at least 12 years if he says 3 or 4 years.
My dad had a saying that I thought was really applicable to getting old. He said, life, as you begin to get to the end of it, is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. And I think that's so true. I know in my case it is. When I had a little cancer problem And the doctor told me with my longevity and what I had done about my cancer problem, I probably had another 20 years. Well, as I've gotten closer to the end of that 20 years.
It seems to be moving faster,
you
doesn't
got
it?
It's just moving right
You're
along.
checking on a renewal plan right now, right?
Right. I told my uncle, Otis Miller, he was 95. I said, boy, if I could sign a contract with the good Lord to live to be 95 and be in as good health as you've been, I'd sign it. He said, you know what's wrong with that? And I said, no, what? He said, when you got to be 94, you'd be wanting to extend your contract. And that's so true.
Well,
everybody wants to go to heaven, but they don't want to go today.
Yeah, right. Well, I told Ronnie it'd be nice if everybody just had an expiration date on them so there was no surprises. But then we figured out people would go out and do really weird things right before they died.
That's true.
That wouldn't be a good thing.
Well, that'd be better than doing it weird when you're young.
You'd think you got it mixed up. You ought to have done the weird things as you got older.
The John Cook's grandfather passed away several years ago. I don't know, but he was way up into his 90s, and the doctor told him he needs to stop eating lard and smoking cigarettes and all this stuff. And Mr. Slager looked up at him and said, what's it going to do? Add 10 years to my life? I mean, he'd done this and he was in his 90s now, big deal. So I'm going to smoke. I'm going to continue to smoke. And
let me mention a couple of small businesses here that are good friends of mine. They sell my books, and that would be our friend Nancy Cason down at the Red Ribbon.
Right.
And our friends at the Art Guild, the Cleveland Art Guild, have lots of nice handmade crafts.
Great Christmas place.
And they have all of our books down there. But Nancy, too, has very unique things, as does places like the Accent Mark that are locally owned that, bring a real unique stuff to Cleveland.
Yeah, and today is Small Business Day in America, so go out and go to a small business, a locally owned business like here. We said earlier, Victor Hicks down at the City Auto Parts, been there for a long time. The friends down at the Diner on First Street, Stadium Barbecue. I know where all the foods are, don't they?
Old Fort.
Old Fort Inn.
Well, there's families in town that in a day when it was easier to start your own business, I mean, everybody in the family owned a business. You think about the Gilbert family. They had the Village bake shop here and the Townhouse bake shop that was downtown now up on the mall, and Fence Company and all those things.
Right.
And the Tinsleys.
It's like the Old Fort Inn and the Liar's Table. I looked around this morning early as I was having my coffee there. The restaurant was full and running over, and I didn't see any folks that were not familiar. They were local people that had filled up that restaurant and the Liar's Table.
Yeah, nothing wrong with the big chain restaurants either, but, spread it around. Hey, go ahead, caller.
Hey, the Superior Market on Central Avenue has been in there a long time, too.
Sure has been, yeah.
It sure has.
I go in there all the time, buy me a hamburger. They have some good hamburgers.
They sure do. Yeah,
well, that's good to know.
And not far from your house either.
No, it's just a couple blocks away.
That's right.
I go in there every day.
Yep.
Well, not every day, but a lot.
Well, thanks, Miss.
Did you hear that Fro Daddy got married?
Well, I was kind of seeing that on Facebook. He said today was the first day of the rest of his wife.
Who's the crazy woman that married him? Was it Cinnamon?
Yes.
All right.
I seen him last night at Pokey's, and he introduced me to his father-in-law. So, all right. I just want to tell you that.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. But you had the Tinsleys, too, and like the Griffiths, families.
Well, yeah, I know.
Owned and operated businesses.
M.L. Tinsley ran the Cherokee, and then Bobby Tinsley, which was my uncle, also ran the Country Kitchen down on South Lee Highway. And
well, first time I met Kenneth Tinsley, they had Tinsley's grocery store on Wildwood.
Right.
He and his dad were in there, and I had gone to work for the city as director of public works. They called it street superintendent in those days, but then Kenneth was city commissioner, and I had business I had to do with each commissioner at the end of the month, and I remember that. And then my father was a small businessman. Before he was a policeman, he he worked for Bill Browder in Athens that owned Athens Oil Company, which was a Shell distributorship in McMinn and Bradley County, and my dad looked after his Shell stations in Bradley County. If some guy went out of business, it was my dad's job to go clean it up and get it ready to lease. But anyway, he had a service station on Wildwood Avenue for 18 years, my dad, and that building's still there. When you go just by Jim Rush Funeral Home and that curve starts bending to the right, there's the old service station building still sitting there. And it was a Shell station when I was growing up. And during World War II, I remember my dad was too old to go in the military, and he went to work for Brown Stove Works, and they were building Army tanks. And my mother, I never saw her in a pair of slacks or pants. She was of the old school, and she wore a dress every day, except during World War II, she bought a brown pair of slacks and a black pair, and she rotated them and operated that service station for my dad during the war, and he worked at Brown Stove Works. So I know a little bit about small businesses.
Now, at Brown Stove Works, what did you say they made?
Army tanks.
Army tanks. Well, Verlin Dunn, who was in his 90s, that's passed away since I recorded him, he talked about that the Army wasn't calling him. They weren't drafting him because his service was so valuable, and he worked there at Brown's.
Yeah.
But then he went.
Everybody used to talk about there's a big crane in there, and no one knew what it was. So that's the first time I heard tanks. Good morning. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron. Paul Watson. How you doing?
Hey, Paul.
Enjoying the conversation this morning. Just wanted to call in and announce our big benefit auction tonight at Prospect Elementary.
4 o'clock, you're starting the barbecue dinner and the gospel singing, and at 5 o'clock's the auction, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And I understand it's for a good cause to rehabilitate people coming out of jail.
Right, it's Ankle Point Foundation benefit, and we work with Teen Challenge also for alcohol and drug abuse, and we need some help.
Well, and I'd just like to invite everybody to come out and see Prospect Elementary School. It's just a good example of how great our schools look these days, and they have a beautiful gym out there, and it's nice that the community can use it.
Absolutely.
Well, Paul, thank you.
Several hundred items to auction, and I appreciate Whoop's concern and help for us, and hope to see everybody out.
All righty, Paul. Thank you.
4 o'clock, right?
4 o'clock's when the food and the gospel music starts. Good combination.
The auction starts at 5.
Sounds good. Thank you. Prospect Elementary.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Eddie, when the businesses were downtown before the village opened, what time would everyone close?
Well, I don't ever remember stores being open at night downtown, so I assumed at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
When it got dark?
Yeah, they closed and went home now.
See,
I know
think
we did at 5 Point, little men's shop we had down there in 59 and 60. I believe we stayed till 6 o'clock.
What building were you in down there?
We were between Larry Gregory's bargain store and Lay's dime store.
Okay.
What happened, there was an alley between those two buildings. And Dan Lay, who owned, I guess was the president of Lay's dime stores, owned that alley. And we were looking at another location down there, and Mr. Lay, I don't know how I ran into him, but he said, well, young man, I'll rent you a space right there in that alley. Well, it was the exact size that we wanted, and all he had to do was put a front and a back and a roof on it, and it had the brick walls from the, and that was the two walls we had, was those brick walls. And so we rented that space from Dan
So was
Lay.
Lay's a local?
Yes.
See, I didn't realize that. I thought it was
yeah,
chain.
Dan Lay is the father of Ed Lay, and he has two brothers. Ed's the oldest. Ed's my age, and I went to school with Ed. And then there were other Lay brothers of Mr. Dan. I know they had one up in Blue Ridge, Georgia, and I think they called that Mr. Lay up there Blue. That's probably a nickname, but I remember the manager down there at 5 Point was a fellow by the name of Ballard, and he had gone to Bradley just ahead of me and ran that store. And it was they had a popcorn machine up there in the front, and you could smell that popcorn all over 5 Point, and it smells so good.
We were in the museum center one night when someone came through that owns that popcorn machine now and had offered to give it to the museum, but it weighs like it would have to be moved with something big.
Well,
and they were trying to figure out the logistics of it all.
You know, and Moore down at 5 Point.
Yeah, you could smell that popcorn everywhere.
Ben Moore had a drugstore on the corner there. The building's still sitting there, and the sign, as I noticed on Facebook, you had it. It's still on the side of the building. It smelled the best in that place. I don't know. I told Ben Moore not too long ago, I said, whatever that smell was, if you could duplicate it, people would pay for it. And they had a little soda fountain there and served that best vanilla ice cream I ever put in my mouth. And, of course, right next door, they had the snack house. And it was snack house number 2, not number 1. Number 1 was on the square, right next to Able Hardware. And Ed Calloway, Joe Moore's brother-in-law, had it, and then Joe had the one at 5 Point, and I know I was playing basketball at Bradley and Coach Tip Smith when we'd go out of town. Sometimes when times were good, we'd get 50 cents, and he'd stop down there, and the snack house would sell us a hamburger and French fries and a Coke for 50 cents. So that was our after the game kind of meal when if we had played in Polk County or whoever, we'd come back to town.
You can honestly say those were the good old days.
Yes, they were.
Now, when
Ledger Collins was doing the cooking.
Oh
gosh. When the 5 Point Pharmacy building is still there, and the snack house was a building where the parking lot is now. Was it a different
and there
building?
was still a little parking area between it and the depot. Not very big, but and if I'm remembering right, and this is really a little before my time, I know Joe Moore worked for the railroad.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they had hotel rooms upstairs over the pharmacy, and those guys from the railroad could spend the night there.
Never heard that before.
Yes.
And
if you'll look on the depot side of the drugstore, you can see where the steps end in the outline of the steps going up there.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, and I know this is before your time, but maybe you heard your dad talk about it. There was a hotel of some sort that was there where Brown's Stove used to be, and the depot is actually that building that's on the south end.
Brown's Stove.
I mean Hardwick's.
The Hardwick Stove, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was an old hotel right there, and then the depot was actually part of that building that always has been like lumber storage or something since I've been knowing what's going on.
Well, I remember as a youngster, of course, the train stopping there, and then they had the depot building where they had a waiting room and you bought tickets and all that, and then that other building, which is built to the same architecture of the depot, was more for freight storage, and they loaded it on the trains. The freight people shipping, I guess Hardwick Stove and Dixie Foundry in those days. They probably brought their stoves over there and probably had a place to put them until the certain train came by that they were shipping them out on.
That makes sense. But I've been told that whatever we had at the original depot building was small, and it's under that structure.
What all services did the cab stand have?
I could stand in the front door of my little store down there at 5 Point, and especially if I didn't have a customer, I'd go to the front door when the phone rang, because they didn't just have a regular phone. They had a big bell outside on that little cab stand, and you could hear that thing ring all over 5 Point. And that call was one of two things. They either needed a cab to take them somewhere, or they needed to take a product that they sold on occasion somewhere. Yeah. And we always laughed about, I won't call the name of the people that I remember owning it, but they'd stomp
You've
around.
been the first person that's never named them.
Well, I can still see Jack McClellan stomping around in the honeysuckles out there and coming up with a little brown paper sack and giving it to one of the guys, and off the cab would go. So somebody had a little stomach problem or had a bad cold, and needed a little medicine, and they sold it.
They just didn't have the honey to go with it, right?
Probably you had to stop at the grocery store and get a little Hard Rock candy and honey.
We had someone say that they drove the cab and it never left that spot, that people would come by and they'd just sell them stuff out of the trunk.
Well, I think they did. But
now, do you remember bus services being here in Cleveland, Eddie?
Yes, but it wasn't. Arlie Crane had a bus service in Cleveland.
So it was individually owned.
It was owned by an individual, and I did know the gentleman's name that drove. I don't remember but one bus, but it went all over Cleveland. And I don't remember. I used to know the guy's name. He later on was a policeman, I think, but he drove the bus for Mr. Crane. But it didn't last too long. I don't remember it being there. And I tell you, the bandstand downtown on the courthouse, I heard you mention somebody talking about the snake handling. As a little boy, on Saturday morning, my mother would give me a glass gallon jug and some money, and I'd go to Creamery, which was located right down below where City Hall is, and get a gallon of buttermilk from a Mr. Larson that owned the Creamery. But before I'd go do that, I'd come by the bandstand, and on Saturday, and it almost always in good weather, there would be a sidewalk preacher, and if I was lucky or unlucky, whichever, they'd be handling snakes. And two or three of us boys, you could climb up on the outside and stand on the outside the banister and watch what was going on inside it. And they'd have a tambourine, and they'd be singing, and maybe a guitar, and things would really get to going rhythm-wise. And, boy, somebody'd pull out a brown tow sack, and out there'd come either a copperhead or a rattlesnake. Now, you talking about little old boys jumping off there and getting some gone. We did. That scared us to death. Doyle Fowler and Junior Pruitt and I were the three that we went down on a lot of times on Saturday morning.
We have up on the screen now Tom and Beecher's Pan Am gas station. It was up on North Coy Street at 25th.
You know whose Corvette that is? That's Jim Corns.
That's what. When you were saying that a while ago, I was thinking. I've
got another picture of that. I think
this is out of the 1957 city directory, I believe.
Wasn't long after that till Pan Am came off of there.
I believe Randy Fox gave me that.
And it was American.
Mm-hmm. And is that building still standing? Is it the one that's on the
there's part
west
of it,
corner?
I think, still there. Elmer Cartwright, my half-brother, later on, after he had the little Shell station over on the other corner next to where the fire hall was, and the fire hall was Curly's Sandwich Shop before it was a fire hall, and some other things. But Elmer actually sold his little Shell station and moved over to that location and was there for a while. The street took his little Shell station. So
now in those days when you went to the gas station, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is you got gas and they checked the air in your tires and your oil and cleaned your windshield off for $0.25 gallon, right?
Right, and not only that, but as I stated before, my dad had a station, and I can remember going to the station as a little boy, and my job, he gave me what they called a little whisk broom. And I was to ask whoever was driving the car if they'd like to have their floorboard swept out. Swept the floorboard out, checked the water and the oil, and sold gas.
Quarter, 15 cents, whatever.
Yeah. The cheapest I remembered, it was about 20 cents when I was in college. I kept my half-brother's station open on Sunday as I was going to Tennessee Wesleyan. And I remember one lady came in there and bought 5 gallons of gas, and it would be $1 for 5 gallons. It's 20 cents a gallon.
Well, and the difference in how people shop too is that you had to be thinking ahead, because most of the gas stations weren't open on Sunday, and the banks closed at 2:00, and all the grocery stores and stuff closed at dark, so you had to
no ATMs.
You had to plan ahead.
You did. I well remember that gas stations. I remember when they started opening on Sunday, and I really remember when they started showing movies on Sunday. Miltine and I were dating, and she's going to First Methodist Church, and I'd go on and go to the movie, and she would go to MYF, and then she'd come over to the movie where I was. And I think she kind of came over and bought a ticket and kind of eased in with it, hoping nobody'd see her going to movie on Sunday night.
Well, there was big articles in the newspaper about how the world was coming to end, that people were going to go see movies on Sundays, and there were people that lobbied against the movie houses and everything.
Blue law, I believe they called it, when they didn't want you to do anything much on Sunday.
What about Gibson Discount Center? That was the next big craze that come on after the Village, right?
Yeah.
That one stop shop thing.
Right.
So we got another call here. Hey, good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Sorry, wrong number.
Okay.
All right. She didn't want to talk live on radio.
No.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden it became, I call it the first Walmart of the area. It was that big superstore where you had clothes. I bought my first guitar at Gibson Discount Center, and
it was right across the street here.
Right, yeah.
Who operated that?
Calfee.
But why did they call it Gibson's if it's the Calfee?
I think that was I think there's more than one Gibson's. I don't think this is the only one.
Okay. That makes sense.
So it was a sort of a chain.
I think it was a small chain in the day. Maybe there was 2 or 3 of them. I don't know that, but I remember when Mr. Calfee, because he got into it with somebody over the price of milk.
Oh yeah, well, there's a big the federal government come and got them because they were selling milk too cheap. Now, as a young man, I couldn't. I was a teenager age, and I'm going, well, if they want to sell it for that much, why can't they sell it for that much? I was going, why does the government interfere? I guess I'm still that way a little bit. Why does the government interfere? I was in the cable business. They told me how much I could sell cable for too, and
right. Well, let me say this. We're about to run out of time here. If Debbie comes and asks you to be on the show, you need to do that, because the pay that they pay, I'll get my check this coming week, and
it's double what I make, Eddie.
Yeah, no, there's not any pay involved, but it's an enjoyable experience, and if you enjoy your community and reminiscing a little bit about the old days, you ought to accept Debbie's invitation if she gives it, and well, I know there's people out there listening, Eddie, that I don't run into and I don't know about that would be great on this show. And you need to talk to some of your liar friends. Last year we kind of had a challenge out that we wanted people to come on to send the biggest liar, and they never could figure out who that was.
Well, they kept saying Eddie.
There was so many
contenders. We got a real table full of them. Somebody sent us a little note when the government was shutting down. Want to know if it shut the liars table down?
No, can't shut the liars table.
And I put it on Facebook that we were funded by private funds, and that we talked about all subjects, solved none, and we welcomed Democrats, Republicans, and mugwumps.
Wow. But I think that's great that you guys get together, and you'd meet up at the Old Fort.
Old Fort, Corky McGowan. By the way, Corky's going to has a health problem, and is going to have some heart work done this coming week, and you need to keep old Cork. He's a good guy. Keep him in your prayers.
Which reminds me of Sylvia Coates has had heart surgery, and I understand that she's doing quite well.
Well, she would do well. She's a fine lady, and she's got a good, strong heart. So Sylvia's all right.
Got a call here. Good morning, live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hey, Ron, I was going to tell Eddie, if I can be on your show, anybody can come be on.
Well, Bullet come on and done a wrestling show with us.
Yeah, and
I enjoyed it, too.
I tell you what, it was fun, wasn't it?
It was.
Sure was.
I was going to suggest 2 people that would be good for your doctorate program was Dr. C.W. Kyle and old John Stansbury.
Well, now, I've got a story on Dr. Kyle that I don't know if he wants to tell about how he sent a foot to somebody.
Oh, Lord, I was there. Yeah, CA's my buddy, and he would make a good one to.
I saw him the other day. I should have asked him.
Well, I I actually talked to him before at Sky Ridge. He goes for his breakfast sometimes, and we was talking. And I tell you what, that man's full of knowledge.
Well, it's just
you
a
get
matter
him on Thursday morning. He and I have breakfast there on Thursday morning.
Okay, you was there one morning. I come talk to him, I believe.
Right.
And he was actually my mother and father's doctor.
Yes.
And
but he'll be 80 years old shortly. So.
Is he that old? He
Yes.
looks really good for.
We saw him the other day.
Oh, at
the Old Fort.
Old Fort, yeah, sure did.
But anyway, I'm enjoying your show this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you need to ask him Thursday if he'd come in and talk about doctors and about sending that foot
People,
to Brewster, wouldn't it?
people wear me out, though, Eddie. I'll say, hey, why don't you come be on our show? Oh, I don't know anything. And then for the next 30 minutes, they'll talk about wonderful, wonderful things. But we get quite a few good people on here.
Go ahead, call you live on Old Town Cleveland.
Hello, how are y'all this morning?
We're
Great.
good, Miss Brenda. How are you?
I'm doing fairly well. I just wanted to say that I don't know if Eddie knows my husband or not, but he used to be the cook at Old Fort, and he had to go to Mexico for 8 months, and he came back, and he's a waiter now. He's not usually there in the mornings. He's usually there in the afternoons, but he's Spanish. And
well, I see those 2 or 3 Spanish guys there, but I don't know which one he is. But Corky sure thinks highly of them.
Yeah, he thinks of Corky and Pat as his family. I mean, he loves them to death. And there are several of his friends that have asked him to come and go to work for him in Mexican restaurants, and he just don't want to leave Corky and Pat because he's worked there now for a long, long time, and he was a cook for a long time. But he's very thin. He's lost weight since he went to Mexico.
Well, you'll have to fatten him back up.
And what's it? Tell me his name.
Carlos. Yeah.
Okay.
And he just thinks the world of Corky and Pat, and he's been telling me about Corky having some health problems.
Right.
And we all need to keep him in.
I've asked him about 100 times to be on this show, and he's always gone somewhere and going. So we hope he does well, and maybe when he's recuperating, he'll come be on the show with us.
Well, yeah, if there's one thing Corky can do, it's talk.
Well, I Corky may hate to admit this, but Corky's kinfolks of mine, and we're not closely related, but we both go through the same strand of folks like Ron Moore, the Cartwrights, and.
Thanks, Miss Brenda.
Well, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Don't forget to go shopping your small businesses today and all days. I understand you can go on the Chamber of Commerce, Cleveland Chamber of Commerce website and maybe print off some coupons. That would be good for some of the small businesses. And we had others that we didn't get to, like Bill Wheeler over Wheeler's Electronics and even the Ball-Headed Bistro down here at the mall, the Rebel Drive-In. All those good places, please visit a small business today.
But I tell you what, Alan Jones deserves some credit. Alan has kept a lot of local little businesses going, and I realize he's made some money, but still, again, he does not have to do that, and he's been very good for our community.
That's right.
Sure have.
That's right. Well, folks, this 2 hours has whizzed right by. Mr. Eddie, as always, we always love to listen to your memories of growing up in Cleveland and where things used to be, and we appreciate that. And you need to be writing some of this stuff down.
Now,
if I can write a book, anybody can.
About Wednesday this coming week, this entire program will be available on YouTube. You'll be able to watch it and hear it all again.
We have a lot of folks that say while they're at work, they have on headphones listening to us and doing their work.
Or people can miss. And our last week's show has had 95 people look at it since we posted it. So that's pretty good. Just tells you how popular that this is. And ending the show, we always try to tell people you've got to start writing down your family history and your friends' history and your work. You got to get those old pictures from out from under the bed and out from under in the closet and the shoe boxes and share those with people, because you'll never know what that old picture brings back a memory of what happened in your neighborhood, or your picture of your father or people you worked with, and our cousins all come up. We'll always remember about Pearl Harbor, but Deb,
will we remember Aunt Pearl?
That's true.
You guys have a great week.
Well, now let me say this
ahead.
too. One of my prized possessions is my daughter Jill went over to my mom's house 30 years ago, and just sat down with a little tape recorder and told my mother, says, "Tell me about my daddy growing up." And now I've got her voice. She's been dead since 85, and now I've got her voice talking about my growing up years. I really need to do that too, but seem like I just don't do it.
Well, everybody, it's so much easier now. I have a tape of my grandfather, my cousin Bruce Epperson. My mother's side of the family are Eppersons. He sat down with my grandfather and recorded him talking about his dad and stuff like that. And oh my goodness, just to play that and hear his voice again.
Was here when the Indians were still here.
Yes, so you sit there and listen to that, and you go, just to hear his voice again is just so great. And then the stories, Deb took the whole tape and wrote it all out, and so it's great.
Took me about 12 hours to type.
So, folks, that's been Old Town
have a great
Cleveland.
Week.
Next
Love
week, Dr. Hood from UTC will be here talking about Appalachian culture, and this is going to be pretty interesting. He's written several books about it, and like I say, he's been a professor, and he looks like he ought to be on Duck Dynasty. He's got that look. So you'll want to try to tune in next week or come by and just talk to Dr. Ralph Hood from UTC. He'll be here with us.
Thanks, folks.
And we'll see you next week on Old Town Cleveland.
Where'd the old town go? Shopping mall. Ooh, where'd the old town go? Did my hometown get old, or just me? Did all my friends get old, or just me? Are they all gonna have to be told, or just me?
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
You need money overnight? Check into cash.